Good morning, everyone. I think we're going to get started. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Peter Smith this morning to the Institute for Work and Health Speaker Series. And Dr. Smith is going to talk about the IWH Strategic Plan. But before I introduce him more fully, I want to just go through a couple of the housekeeping issues that we need to talk about. We hope that you'll have questions and comments about the plan for Peter. If you do, please write them in the Q&A box, and I'll go through them at the end of the talk, and we can ask Peter your questions that way. Also want to let you know that there is closed captioning available for anyone who would like to use it. It's at the bottom of your screen under More. If you click on that, you will see captioning and you can open that up. So I'm delighted, as I said, to welcome Dr. Peter Smith today. Peter is the president and a senior scientist at the Institute for Work and Health. He's also a professor at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health at the University of Toronto. He received his PhD from the Institute of Medical Science at U of T and has extensive experience conducting research related to work injury and its consequences using large population-based surveys and administrative workers' compensation data. Dr. Smith's key research interests include gender and sex differences in the relationship between work and health, labor market inequities, inequalities and their health-related outcomes, labor market experiences of newcomers, older workers, younger workers, and other vulnerable labor force subgroups, chronic illness and work injury, and trends in working conditions over time. But today he's going to leave most of his research aside and instead talk about the Institute for Work and Health Strategic Plan. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Monique, for the opportunity to present, and thank you everyone for joining us online to hear about our new strategic plan at the Institute for Work and Health. I'd like to start today's event by just acknowledging the land on which we're gathering today. Although it's an online event, I am speaking to you today from Toronto, which originates from the Mohawk word Toronto, which is the place in the water where the trees are standing. For thousands of years, this place has been the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. In performing this land acknowledgement, I want to express my gratitude for having the opportunity to present on this land, but also to reflect on the impacts that colonialisation has had and continues to have on Indigenous peoples in Canada, and the role that I should be playing, need to play in the path to truth and reconciliation. So in terms of our new strategic plan at the Institute for Work and Health, the vision of the Institute over the next 5 years is healthy, safe and inclusive work through excellent research, which is very similar to the byline we have at the Institute for Work and Health about excellent research, safe work and healthy workers. In saying the word health here, it's deliberate in terms of we could often focus on just safe work, noting that we'd like to have a work or workplaces which are removed of hazards that workers experience, but work is also health enhancing. And so by wanting to have healthy work in this vision statement, we really want work that both is preventative of occupational injury, but also fulfilling in terms of people's sense of mastery and sense of accomplishment in what they do within the workplace. In terms of the mission of the Institute over the next 5 years is to conduct and mobilise research that supports policymakers, employers and workers in creating healthy, safe and inclusive work. And here we're also deliberate in terms of both wanting to conduct, but also to mobilise that research. So it's not enough just to conduct excellent research, but we at the Institute really want to make sure that the research that we do conduct and create gets into people who can make changes using that research. And in terms of the values, the 7 values of the Institute over the next 5 years, these values both talk to the types of research that we want to conduct, in that we want research that's excellent, in terms of integrity, that it's rigorous and ethical, and also innovative, but also in terms of the collaborations which we'll use to mobilise that research, in that they're respectful, that they're meaningful collaborations, in that there's a two-way exchange of knowledge in how we engage with our stakeholder communities. There's a focus on equity in terms of both the work that we do and how we include stakeholders in our research progress and projects. And also as an organisation that receives public monies, both through the province of Ontario and through federal granting agencies, we need to be accountable in terms of how we spend that money so that we're demonstrating value for the investment which is given and placed in us. In terms of developing the strategic plan at the Institute, this was a year-long process that we started around this time last year. We had 3 meetings with our tripartite board of directors. As someone in this role for just over a year, I'd like to acknowledge just how important it is to have a board of directors that's both engaged in the work that the Institute creates and is also tripartite, ensuring that we have representation from organised labour and also from the employer's perspective. We had 30 one-on-one interviews with senior representatives of our key partners and collaborators. We did 4 open consultations to all IWH staff where we discussed each of the different strategic directions that I'll be putting in front of you today. And we also did a survey where we had 1,000 different survey responses from people who subscribe to IWH products. And all of that information was brought together and distilled into the document that is now our new strategic plan. In terms of the context in which this plan is created, it builds on a strong foundation. So the Institute for Work and Health has been around for more than 30 years. And so we have this experience on which we're building of 30 years of excellent research and active and effective knowledge translation and exchange. We have an interdisciplinary research environment, which is a really unique aspect of the way that the Institute goes about examining work and health research questions. It's different from, say, a university setting where people within similar disciplines are located within the same departments. At the Institute, we have a set of scientists which span across different disciplines and different research methods, and we can use that to our strength in terms of the way we think about different research questions and the way we might go about answering them. And we also have a history of strong and collaborative partnerships, both through our board of directors and through other members of our stakeholder community, where both we can hear about the issues that workplaces and workers are experiencing, but also we can hopefully disseminate the research findings that we create at the Institute for Work and Health. That strong foundation takes place within a context of fairly rapid societal change, which is occurring at the moment in terms of growing rates of inequality, rising rates of immigration, rapid changes in technology, low unemployment and labour shortages. For those of you who follow the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, there was a press conference by Minister McNaughton this morning where he was commenting that there are approximately 300,000 jobs which are currently unfilled within the Ontario labour market and ways that the ministry is looking to fill those jobs, and a renewed public interest in work as a determinant of health. And so we've seen throughout the COVID pandemic where people often were focusing on the work environment and drawing recognition to things that the Institute's known for 30 years about how important work is as a social determinant of health. And there's also a lot of complexity in terms of the work and health challenges that are now facing workers, workplaces and policymakers. We have rises in new types of work arrangements, in particular hybrid work arrangements, which were not as common prior to the COVID pandemic, an increased focus on mental health and inclusivity within workplaces. And these are issues that workplaces and workers and policymakers around Ontario are struggling with about how to best address issues around inclusivity and also mental health within workplaces. We've also seen some long-standing challenges which the Institute seeks to make meaningful progress on over the next 5 years, such as the stagnant rates of workers' compensation claims, in particular critical injuries and fatalities, and also increases in the ageing of the workforce, both in Ontario and within Canada. There's also been a rapid rise in mis and disinformation which is occurring, which demands that we have a rapid evidence-informed responses to this. So it's very hard for workers, workplaces and policymakers to wade through the massive amount of information they're faced with about how they might address some of these complex issues within the work and health landscape. And so it's important that the Institute, as a trusted resource in terms of work and health research and a trusted evidence base, that they can rely on us, that we can get information to stakeholders who are willing to act on it quickly in terms of how we move forward. And there's also been increases in the range of data and information and ways that we can maybe link these data sources that are important for us to address as an organisation as we move forward. So in terms of the way that we've developed the strategic plan of the Institute for Work and Health, it is, in a sense, a balancing act that we're working through over the next 5 years. We need to continue to do what we're known and respected for, which is to produce excellent, rigorous, and meaningful research, but also seize on opportunities for change and renewal. So we have to take advantages of situations as they arrive and ensure that we're addressing those new issues that are arising that workers, workplaces, and policymakers want to have answers to. We need to address existing challenges. So we need, as an organisation, we need to try to create more movement on long-standing issues around business size, small business, the challenges faced by small businesses, around musculoskeletal conditions, and around critical incidences and fatalities. But we also need to explore new areas and get into new areas such as workplace mental health and diversity and immigration. We need to continue to produce rigorous and independent research, but we also need to keep pace with the demand for information from our stakeholder community. And these are the challenges that we are trying to address in the 4 strategic directions that form the pillars of our new strategic plan. So in terms of the strategic directions, there are 4 strategic directions that the Institute will be focusing on over the next 5-year period. These are to advance the science of work and health research, to expand the reach and impact of IWH research, to strengthen the work and health ecosystem, and to ensure that IWH is a safe and healthy workplace. That 4th strategic direction isn't so much about, I guess, the work that we'll be doing, but is more focused on, as an organisation, if we're going to be in the space of work and health research, it's important that we're walking the talk, so to speak, and ensuring that we are a model of a safe and healthy workplace. In terms of strategic direction 1, in terms of advancing the science of work and health research, we have 3 objectives within this research direction. They're to conduct excellent research that deepens our understanding of how to improve the health, safety, and well-being of working people and promote full and inclusive work participation, to provide expert advice to improve program and policy design and the implementation of work in the work and health arena. One of the things that we heard consistently throughout our one-on-one interviews is that people respected the fact that if they would reach out to the Institute for Work and Health, either to me, to Monique, the scientific director, or to one of our scientists, they would always respond and provide information back. So when they call out, you're willing to listen. And we also want to strengthen the evaluation of worker, workplace, and system-level interventions that are designed to improve health and promote work participation. We've seen over the last 12 months multiple different new and innovative programs which have been put in place at the system level, and it's vitally important from my perspective that the Institute is playing a role in terms of the evaluation of those different activities to ensure that they're both impacting workers and workplaces in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And in terms of how we'll measure our success within this first research direction, we'll do it in multiple different ways, and these ways are positioned here on the slide. I think it's important that these ways acknowledge both our need to seek the approval of our academic peers, as that's our primary way of demonstrating the excellence and rigour of our research, and that involves our grant success rate and the number of citations that we have. We want to ensure that the work produced by the Institute is at least, if not more, widely utilised over the next 5 years than similar articles that are produced by our colleagues outside of the Institute. But we also want to balance that and ensure that we're being reached out to. So the number of times that we're being asked to provide advice to our partners and collaborators, and the amount of work that we're doing at the Institute, which is dedicated towards evaluation. So again, it's important that we not only demonstrate the excellence of what we do with our academic peers, but that our work is demonstrated in terms of its meaningfulness, both on the amount of times that our stakeholders reach out for advice and that we're engaged in projects that are demonstrating the impact and value of system levels activities which are occurring within the province. In terms of our research focus, this diagram presents our research plan. So the Institute's research plan is done in conjunction with our strategic plan and sets up the priority areas for the Institute over the next 5-year period, the same 5-year period of our strategic plan. Within this diagram, it shows that we will continue to have a focus on the reciprocal relationships between work and health, both how work environments and working conditions impact worker health, but also how health conditions experienced by workers, be they work-related or non-work-related, impact the full and inclusive participation of those workers within the labour market. We will address these different questions at 3 different levels, both at the worker level, the workplace level, and at a systems level. And the 6 priority areas for us over the next 5 years are both examining how the changing nature and the future of work is going to impact worker health and work conditions, understanding work in the broader society. One of the things which we recognise as an organisation is that there are things that occur outside of the work environment or outside of, for example, the policy decisions of the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development that still have broad impacts on work conditions and worker health. I mean, these might include changes in terms of the affordability of daycare. It might include things such as I was at the launch of the Inclusive Design for Employment Access, the IDEA project, which has been co-hosted at the Institute for Work and Health. And at that particular project launch, there was a lot of talk about how, changing the work environment is one thing, but you really need to change the context outside of the work environment and inside of the work environment if we do want to have full and inclusive participation of people with disabilities within the labour market. We also want to focus on organisational context in a renewed way, in particular a focus on small business size and the challenges faced by small business in terms of both health and safety, the prevention of occupational injuries, and also in return to work. We want to address long-standing issues such as musculoskeletal conditions and fatalities and move the needle on why these types of conditions are not reducing within the Ontario labour market and the broader labour markets outside of Ontario. We want to focus on worker diversity and inclusivity. These are new activities that have an increased prominence over the last few years within workplaces both in Ontario and outside of Ontario. And we want to better understand how workplaces are addressing these issues and the impacts that has on worker health and safety. And mental health and work, again, is a large issue where there's a lot of opinions, but there's not always a strong evidence base on which workplaces and workers might start to make changes within the workplace. In terms of our second strategic direction, which is to expand the reach and impact of IWH research, we want to strengthen our networks through continued engagement with our stakeholders and partners. We want to do more to deliver evidence-based products and learning opportunities that catalyse the use of research among workers, workplaces and policymakers. We want to expand our reach through strategic and creative dissemination of our research findings. In terms of the ways that we'll be measuring our progress on these strategic objectives within this strategic direction, we want to focus on the number of times that we bring stakeholders together to discuss high priority work and health research issues. At the Institute for Work and Health, we do a very good job of engaging stakeholders within particular research projects, but there are renewed opportunities for us to bring together stakeholders as a neutral convener. We can bring together different perspectives around high priority work and health topics, which might form the basis of new research activities as we move forward. We want to keep following and monitoring the percentage of our subscribers who indicate in surveys that they use our resources in the course of their work. If you think about the work that the Institute for Work and Health might produce, often in terms of research, we could think about it in three broad buckets. Sometimes you just want to describe a problem. How big is a particular issue and how much attention should we be directing towards that? The next step would be to describe, are there particular groups who are experiencing this issue more or less than other groups in the labour market? So are there particular groups we might want to focus on in terms of future intervention efforts? But the third part is actually to determine, well, are there tools that we can develop or ways that we can monitor other interventions that are taking place? Again, within the stakeholder discussions that we engage with, there was a sense especially within the employer community, that they wanted to see more tools being brought forward by the Institute for Work and Health, knowing that the tools that we do bring forward have a solid evidence base on which they're based, and so they can be trusted more than, say, other tools that you might find if you were to Google psychosocial work environment in Canada. We also wanted to monitor the number of subscribers, event attendees, and social media followers and media requests that we have, including, for example, the speaker series that you're all part of today. We've seen a huge uptake in terms of the numbers of people who can now attend the speaker series events that we host at the Institute for Work and Health, moving from events that used to be 30 or 40 people within the IWH boardrooms to hundreds of people from around Ontario and around Canada and internationally who can now attend these events and ask questions within this new virtual environment. In terms of strategic direction 3, which is to strengthen the work and health ecosystem, within this research direction, we again have 3 different objectives. One is to develop and monitor the next generation of work and health research expertise in Ontario. One of the areas that the Institute actively engages in, although it's not well enough known, is that we do spend a lot of time, each of our scientists have academic appointments at different universities, and we often host both PhD students and master's practicum students over the summer to get engaged and open their eyes into work and health, the importance of work and health research from both people who might be interested in work, but putting in the health angle, or people who might be interested in health and giving them an angle about why work is such an important determinant of health. We also want to improve data capacity within Ontario and across Canada. This speaks to our renewed focus on evaluation research at a system level. If we had better data resources or data resources that were better linked to other data resources, we could do more in terms of evaluating system level changes that occur over time and the impact of different activities that occur at the system level within Ontario or within Canada to answer work and health research questions. We also want to continue to develop novel research methods and approaches and accelerate their use in the application of work and health research studies. These might include things about the adjustment of convenience samples to make them more representative so that they can be used more fully to better understand the extent to which problems exist within the Ontario labour market or the groups that are faced with different challenges and issues in the work and health context. In terms of this research direction, the way we'll monitor our progress over the next 3 years are the numbers of students and trainees that we support. As I said, IWH supports numerous PhD students at a variety of different universities across the province, and numerous master's students come to us for practicum placements and experience to understand how to conduct excellent work and health research, but also around the work we do around knowledge transfer and exchange activities within our research projects. We want to also focus on the number of new population health data sources that are either held at IWH or accessed by IWH scientists, and also the number of peer-reviewed contributions we have that advance both frameworks to better understand work and health issues, methods to address those issues, or measures that are put in place to measure important new aspects that are evolving within the work and health context. And our fourth strategic direction is to continue to ensure that IWH is a healthy, inclusive, and engaging place to work. Here, we will focus on ensuring that we implement work and workplace health and safety best practices to ensure the health and well-being of our staff, to integrate diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility principles throughout the way we conduct research and the way we function as an organisation, and to cultivate an environment of continuous growth where IWH staff are supported in their professional development. Here, the ways which we'll measure success is through biannual surveys every 2 years, where we can monitor how well or what percentage of IWH staff feel safe and satisfied in their work, who believe that the Institute is an equitable and inclusive place to work, the degree to which our board of directors, our scientific advisory committee, and our executive reflect the diversity of the communities which we serve, the percentage of staff who feel supported in their professional development, and the number of hours that IWH staff spend on training and development activities. So, to summarise, I'll just see where I am at in terms of time. To summarise, this new strategic plan and the directions and objectives within the strategic plan do provide a real meaningful roadmap for our organisation over the next 5 years. I'm happy to say that our board of directors were actively engaged, as were our staff, throughout the development of this plan, and we've put in place a number of procedures that will ensure that we keep focusing on the plan in terms of how we assess our own performance, both individually and collectively over the next 5-year period. We do look forward to working with a wide range of partners that includes workers, workplaces and policymakers, and fellow researchers to bring the commitments that we've made within this strategic plan to life. And I do want to take some time at the moment to thank everyone who has contributed to the development of the document, both the 1,000 subscribers who answered our survey last year, the more than 30 people who engaged in one-on-one conversations with us over the last 12 months, to IWH staff and to the board of directors and our scientific advisory committee who contributed to the document that you see before you. And I'm happy to say now that the plan is live on the IWH website. There's a link there. Sabrina has also put a link in the chat box you can click on so that you can download your own copy of the strategic plan, which outlays everything that I've covered in the presentation today. So with that, I would like to thank you. For those of you who don't get to ask a question today, I know we have plenty of time for questions, but if you don't have a question come up later, you can certainly email me at any time. My email information is on the slide here. And of course, if you would like to keep track of all the latest research and news from the Institute, you can go to our website, iwh.on.ca/subscribe, and subscribe to all IWH information products. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. We do have a couple of questions. Just a reminder to everyone, love to have more. Please type any questions that you have in the Q&A box, the question and answer box, and I will pass them along, as many as I can, to Peter. But maybe we'll get started, Peter, with one question that came up. On slide 9, you described the 6 research areas of focus that the Institute's going to undertake. How did you go about identifying each of these areas?
Great, thanks, Monique. Yes, so in terms of, again, it was sort of a multi-step process in terms of how we developed the content of our research plan that aligns with our strategic plan. It started with a retreat of the IWH scientists, which occurred in September of last year. As I mentioned in the presentation, we're really fortunate at the Institute to have a multidisciplinary group of scientists which cover, psychology, ergonomics, epidemiology, qualitative research methods, human resources, and plus many, many others, economics, in terms of bringing this group together to understand what are the pressing issues that they hear about, that our IWH scientists hear about, both within their academic networks and also their non-academic networks. As a research organisation, we're constantly engaged in different academic activities, either reviewing grants, reviewing manuscripts, engaged in conference presentations that help us understand what are the issues that are being talked about both provincially, nationally and internationally. We can bring those different perspectives together within that one-day retreat where we developed a draft plan of what were the issues that we felt best equipped to deal with, noting that as an organisation, a relatively small organisation, we can't address every single issue but we can outline priorities where we can make meaningful contributions, and also other areas where we want to contribute, but we realise the lead should be taken by other organisations. That process resulted in a draft, which we were then able to send to both our board of directors as well as our International Scientific Advisory Committee for more feedback, which we then integrated into a revised document, which is the final document that sort of describes those 6 broad research areas, and also describes some of the other research questions that would take within those particular areas. That document itself is an internal document for the IWH scientists and for our Scientific Advisory Committee to monitor our progress. But the diagram that I presented today is a public accessible document that identifies the particular areas that will be focused on over the next 5-year period, recognising that will also, as new areas arrive, we want to continue to be nimble and flexible to address these new pressing issues that arise over the 5-year period that we have going forward.
Okay, thank you. Someone has commented that it's very good to see that you have measures of progress. Are these measures intended to be internal, or will the measures be published for the public, like on your website?
So the broad measures are public. I've sort of announced them today. In terms of the internal measures, they will be monitored by our board of directors. And so our board of directors has a more specific set of measures, which they will use as a dashboard to monitor our progress annually in terms of how far we're going in terms of the progress we want to meet. In terms of some of the specific, without providing too much details, we want to continue to have an above average grant success rate. We want to continue to have citations to our work, which will be above the average citations within the work and health community. In terms of the diversity that we seek within both our board of directors, our scientific advisory committee, and our executive, we have ways that we don't want to, I guess, have a particular number counting exercise, but we do want to ensure that we're continuing to progress forward over the 5-year period. And our board of directors, as I said, we'll be using a report card, a dashboard to monitor our progress and ensure we're moving forward for each year over the next 5-year period.
Okay, thank you. Another question. You highlighted an increased research focus on the evaluation of programs and interventions. Can you give some examples of what types of evaluations IWH scientists will undertake?
Yeah, so as I sort of described, we will seek to undertake evaluations both at a worker level, a workplace level, and a system level, just focusing on the system level because I think it's certainly the most tangible at the moment. There's been a lot of activity and a lot of announcements through, for example, the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development on different activities that are taking place at the provisional level, different programs. Just last week, there was an announcement about new investments in training, which will be conducted through our system partners, through the health and safety associations moving forward. So then there is a lot of opportunities to further explore what are new modes of training that have been put in place, what are new methods to train workers to ensure they're safe. And then the role that the Institute can play is as a trusted independent source to evaluate, well, what are the short-term gains that are experienced through their training, so such as knowledge, increases in knowledge as part of the training, but also what are the more medium and longer term, such as increased use of safe workplace practices within workplace from people who have done the training, even longer term advances on, and what has been the result of those new practices on workplaces in terms of injury rates, near miss injuries, and things like fatalities and critical incidents. That does require a renewed focus throughout other aspects of our plan around building data capacity so that we have those sources of information moving forward so that we can monitor important changes that are occurring both from a leading indicator perspective and a lagging indicator perspective within the province.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I guess a bit related to that, but going beyond specific evaluations, someone is wondering a little bit if you can speak more about how you will capture some of the knowledge utilization by some of your intended stakeholders. Are there going to be efforts to validate or to further evaluate and reach out how the research at the Institute might be being implemented in real-world settings?
Yes. So one of the things that we do every 2 years is we do a stakeholder survey where we do ask people how often do they use IWH research. And at the moment, about 2/3 of our subscribers tell us that they do use research in some way, IWH research in some ways. But I think we want to do more than that, which is a metric that we'll continue to monitor over the next 5-year period. But we also want to make an increased effort to gather the stories that you've just discussed, Monique, such as around when a workplace does use IWH research, we want to more actively engage into better understanding that experience. So what was the context in which the person came across IWH research? In what ways did they use it? What have they seen in terms of the impact? So we do that to some extent already. The Institute for Work and Health does monitor our impact through our impact case studies. We're one of the few research organisations that actually has a system whereby we monitor impact in a very clear metric for the different levels of impact that we seek to make as an organisation. As we move forward, we want to have more efforts in grabbing, I guess you might call them vignettes of ways in which our research has been utilised. And so in this, I take this opportunity to say to people, if you are using IWH research, we'd love to hear from you about the ways in which you're using it and find out more about the ways in which we're using it so that we can create these stories so that other workplaces who might be in a similar position that you were when you started to use the research might be able to learn from the experiences that you've had. And so I do think we want to cultivate an environment where workers and workplaces and even policymakers can continuously learn from others about how they can make their policies and procedures more evidence-informed moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And before I ask the next question, again, encourage people to ask questions in the Q&A box. So please do send your questions and comments. We have someone who notes that they are struck by the parallel in objectives and programming between IWH and the Occupational Health Unit of the Quebec Institute of Public Health. And so is wondering if there is an interest in collaboration with the INSPQ researchers. And for example, they note that they develop a number of tools for addressing psychosocial work, organizational factors, and intervention guides. They tend to be produced in French, but there may be opportunities to translate materials back and forth and to do more research. And so I was interested in your thoughts about collaborations with others.
Yes. So we certainly, as an organisation, we are interested in broadening our collaborations both provincially, nationally, and internationally with other work and health groups. And so INSPQ would be one of those. We are formalising our collaborations with the IRSST, which is related to the in terms of as a research organisation within Quebec. And in fact, one of the strategic plans, so as we developed our own strategic plan, we looked at the strategic plans of other organisations. And one of the strategic plans that we found particularly relevant was that of the IRSST as it moves forward. And so there are some parallels between the objectives that the Institute has, the Institute for Work and Health has, and the IRSST also has, in particular around building of data capacity within Canada to better understand both the impact of system level activities, but also just to understand what are the working conditions and their associated health outcomes among workers in Ontario and Canada, and actually, get into situations where we might be able to compare different situations across provinces or even within provinces across different regions. And I do think in terms of, I guess, developing more meaningful collaborations with other research organisations, I think as a collective, we can have much more influence on people who collect data to request that they better integrate work information into health databases, for example. If we do that, not just as the Institute, but as a collective of relevant work and health research and policy organisations moving forward. And so that is something which we seek to do as an organisation. And again, if you're a leader in an organisation who believes that you could collaborate effectively with the Institute for Work and Health, by all means, reach out to me at the email address which is on the slide in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Another question. The strategic plan identifies a need to build work and health data capacity within Ontario and across Canada. Can you give some examples of population level data linkages that could be made and new types of research questions that could be answered? Is this something that's unique to IWH potentially, or is this something that others are doing as well?
Thanks. Yeah, so I think there are opportunities, and I think there are opportunities both at a worker level and at a workplace level in relation to data linkages. So if you think about work at a worker level, one of the key findings throughout the COVID pandemic is that we had a lot of, or very busy collecting health information, but no one bothered to think about, are these people that were collecting information, are they working? What types of occupations are they working in? What types of industries are they working in? Are they attending the workplace? In terms of really better understanding what is the importance of work as a determinant of health. I mean, we at the Institute believe it is, but quantifying that, I think, is a really important thing that we need to use better data linkages to do. And I don't think it's in that particular area, I don't think it's an area that it's for the institutes alone to focus on. I think all the other funded research organisations with Ontario have a vested interest in better integrating things like occupation and industry information in emergency department data. You would imagine with advances in technology that it would be possible to better collect that type of information. There has been work which has been done by researchers outside of the Institute about developing algorithms to better accurately code occupational information. If we could integrate that through reciprocal collaborations between, say, the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development and the Ministry of Health to better integrate occupational information into health databases, that would be an amazing resource for us to leverage moving forward. At the workplace level, there's also really important opportunities that I think the Institute can play a role in pushing forward in a meaningful way. So we have a lot of workplace information that's collected, for example, inspection information, which is collected by the Ministry. We have workplace injury, which is collected by the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board. We have registration information, which is collected by the Business Registry of Canada. We have revenue and expense information, which is collected by the Canadian Revenue Agency, which is housed at Statistics Canada. We could really use linkages to create a more comprehensive portrait of workplaces in Ontario and better understand what are the conditions that workplaces go through, for example, on their way to having a critical incident or a fatality. Are there ways that we can best identify leading indicators of these situations occurring as we move forward? I think that's really important work, and it's a work that the Institute's in a unique position to be able to move forward, given both our existing expertise and the funding which we receive generously through the province of Ontario.
Okay, thank you. Someone is interested, if you're able to comment it on, about the relative emphasis on the different categories of research that the Institute will be undertaking. And they give an example of sort of, will there be more emphasis on primary prevention versus return to work versus compensation? Are there some areas that you mentioned of research that are likely to get the most attention during the next few years and some less, or do you know that at this point? I don't, so I would say as we move forward, we do want to continue to have a dual focus, both on how work impacts health and how health impacts work. One of the things that we've certainly seen, even just through the recent expansion of the mandate of the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, is that these things go hand in hand. Occupational health and safety is part of understanding what are the impacts of increased skill recognition, what are the impacts of making increases in immigration as we move forward. And we can only really understand those by taking this broad perspective, by focusing on how does work impact health and how do health conditions and other factors impact someone's ability to participate inclusively within the labour market. In terms of the 6 priority areas, we have a commitment as an organisation to ensure that we are focused on all of those as we move forward. The relative weight that we'll give to those at a year-over-year basis will probably be determined by a number of factors. In particular, most of the work that we do at a project level at the Institute for Work and Health is supported
by research grant funding, project research grant funding, which we bring in through federal and provincial granting agencies. So as an organisation, we receive about 70% of our funding through the ministry, through our transfer payment agreement, but we bring in another 30%, which we use to make meaningful progress on a variety of different research projects. We currently run somewhere between 20 to 30 plus projects a year within the broad areas of work to health and health to work. So some of it will rely on funding. It'll also involve what we hear from our stakeholder community. And so one of the things that we want to do as an organisation is bring people together to discuss high priority research topics. And we want to be investing, we can invest as an organisation in these areas where people are willing to act. And I think that's, again, one of the things that we've learned is, and that we seek to do as an organisation, is play a more meaningful role as a convener to bring people together to say, what do we think about these high priority areas? Where are people willing to act? And what is the value that the Institute can have to those conversations? So how can we be involved in those activities that if people are willing to act, let's be involved in the evaluation. Let's move that information back more quickly so people can better understand what is it that works and how can that be scaled up to all workplaces in Ontario. And so, as I said, both a function of research grants, which are hard to predict, and also our stakeholder community, which will help determine where are people willing to make decisions and put in place interventions, and how can the Institute make a meaningful contribution to those activities.
Okay, thank you. Someone is interested in knowing what you would like research funders to consider when reviewing the strategic plan. Do you have any thoughts on how funders may work to support the plan beyond just generally funding research?
So yes, so I think in terms of, I guess, a general comment to research funding, I would say is we need one within the health space. So most of the funding in Canada is done either through the Canadian Institutes for Health Research, which is focused primarily on health, or the Social Science and Humanities Research Council, which is focused primarily on work. We need those funding agencies to either work together or internally work on better integrating work into the health research and health into the work research. And so we need them to work collaboratively to ensure that there's opportunities for organisations like the Institute who want to do meaningful work in the work and health space. I do think from a broader funding perspective, we need to have a renewed investment in multi-year funding. If we want to do evaluations and we want to demonstrate the impact of system, workplace and worker level activities, we need to invest in multi-year funding to enable that to occur. And when I say multi-year, I don't just mean 2 years, I mean 3 and 4 and 5 year projects, because it takes that long to integrate different stakeholders within the process to design evidence-informed interventions that will take place and to monitor how they go both in the short term, medium term and long term. So we need more multi-year funding. We need better integration of work into health research and health into work research as we move forward.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. Thank you for that. On gathering and disseminating the lessons in the usage of IWH research, which someone has said is very good to hear, are you planning future webinars similar to this one? They note, of course, newsletters are helpful, but a webinar ensures that someone's scheduling time to learn.
Sorry, could you just repeat? It just dropped out just a little bit for me, Monique, in terms of the question.
Yeah. So the question is on gathering and disseminating lessons in the usage of IWH research. Are you planning future webinars similar to this one? Yes. Newsletters are helpful, but webinars ensure someone is scheduling time to learn.
Well, I would have to discuss this with the chair of the Speaker Series Committee, which is you, Monique, as we move forward. But I do think we certainly want to create an increased visibility of the impact of IWH research. And we'll be doing that both through a reorganisation of our website to better promote both the impact case studies, the impact model that the Institute uses, but also these stories about how workplaces are using our research. I like the idea in general of annually potentially having a speaker series where we can talk about how the the Institute's research is being used by workplaces, workers or policymakers, because I think it's an important learning opportunity. I mean, we do our best to do rigorous, independent and excellent research, but it relies on, and then we try to mobilise it and catalyse it as best we can. But I do think that workplaces are the best, I guess, informers of how do you use research within that setting. And so I do think the Institute can play a better job in terms of promoting how different groups have used our work, and the lessons that they've learned that can be useful for other workplaces that are interested in also following an evidence-informed approach to occupational health and safety, and some of the other issues that workplaces face within the work and health space.
Terrific. So a number of comments, Peter, thanking you for this presentation and saying how helpful it is. One last question that we have is, how can a workplace get involved in research being conducted by IWH?
So in a number of different ways, I think workplaces can get involved. So one, obviously, if you're not already subscribed, please go to the website iwh.on.ca/subscribe so you can hear about our e-alerts and our event notifications and other different activities that the Institute is engaged in. If you are a workplace that's, for example, thinking about implementing programs or are already implementing programs and want to get an independent, rigorous evaluation of those programs, I'd encourage people to reach out to me directly at my email address to think about ways that you might be able to collaborate with the Institute going forward. As I've commented in the presentation today, we're interested in both a renewed or an increased focus on evaluation research as we move forward, but also on developing innovative measures that might be able to be used in workplaces. And so there are opportunities within both of those areas for collaborations with workplaces to better understand how do people respond to new measures that the Institute's developing, measures around the job demands and accommodations tool, measures around occupational health and safety vulnerability, which we've increased over time. I imagine over the next 5 years, we'll be also developing measures that better understand progress around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility within workplaces. So if you're the sort of workplace that's either interested in putting in place things and seeing what happens as a result, or testing, working with us to help test those measures, we'd love to hear from you, or I'd love to hear from you and figure out ways that we can work together moving forward.
Okay, and I just want to echo as a member of the scientific staff at IWH that it is a really exciting time for us to have the opportunity to implement our strategic plan, our research plan, do research with workers and workplaces and other stakeholders, other groups across the country. So yes, please do contact Peter and any of us at the Institute. And just want to let you know that we do have a webinar every month during basically from September to the end of June. And so our next talk will be held by Doctors Nancy Carnide and Paul Demers, who will talk about occupational patterns in opioid-related harms among Ontario workers. Well, please do reach out to us. Thank you so much, Peter, for the presentation today. That's all the questions we have.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.